there aren't really any lawyers here. Instead of be able to hire, recruit, keep somebody for a couple of years here, that they're, I mean, I need to know what is that salary level then that I can offer them that they're gonna look at.
So that's where I just kinda need to know that we're starting at their take home at 75,000, like yours is, whatever the state, 50-something thousand,
This good.
before all the taxes, so I can run those numbers. That's what I'm trying to get done to,
Okay.
so I can give you that.
And I'm not clear on
Potentially
what
3, but hopefully just
they're
2.
approving right
Yeah,
now.
that's what we're trying to get to.
That contract.
So you're saying 75,000 total cost, and so he's trying to determine what that would mean as a salary.
And we'll have to actually task Debbie with plugging that into the system
And that's why,
and getting that for you, but I
what
don't
we're
think we
looking
can do
at,
that
so I can run it the right
now.
way.
Yeah,
Do you feel you can get somebody in that area?
Well, that's what I need to know.
That would be like
If that-
60
If that number goes too low,
60 to 65 is what it's looking like right now.
yeah, if that number goes too low, then it can't accomplish it, we can't hire somebody that we haven't reached our objective.
I would maybe suggest this, if you want more, maybe come to us with a proposal. Where's it gonna come from? Are you going to maybe seek a grant? Is there an agreement you can reach with Missoula County who pulled their assistant out? I don't know, but I would say this, you requested the 75. My motion is for the 75. If you want more, come to us with a proposal, let's negotiate,
What I actually requested was a salary level of up to 75,
okay?
but that would mean that there's a number above that as far as total cost of the county. So what you're saying is total cost is 75.
Yep. I don't think we can ask our departments to cut into the muscle of their budgets like we are. Inform them that there will be no money for vehicles or potentially an ambulance this year. And then say, and we're going to try and hire at top dollar. I think we've gotta have some give and take here. So I'm gonna sit strong on the 75. Everybody's in the same boat, everybody's gonna be hurting, everybody's gonna have to struggle together as a unit. And that's just where we're at.
Well, I heard, but nobody ever had the idea that it was gonna have a murder case coming up like this, a high profile on their sides. So,
And that's why we're bending
think
over
that's why it
backwards
should
to
be
make
a-
this happen, though,
maybe
frankly.
depending on experience.
That makes it hard to budget for if we don't have a specific dollar amount.
And it's
One
not
caveat
unreasonable to
too-
ask for, to set a limit. If Corey can come to us with a proposal, we can increase that if we have to, but for budgeting purposes, I think this has to be the starting point, we go from there.
And we're already a month and a half into the current fiscal year, so we need to take that into factor too. What are the hours left in this fiscal year that we're budgeting for?
Oh,
So that could increase that a little bit.
it would, what would that be?
And then it
Again,
depends
Ralph.
on when he hires too, so if he hires the first of September, given another couple weeks to get everything together, and I'm playing devil's advocate at being sooner than later. So that would just take,
Yeah.
you know, that's
Yeah, A
two,
third of the year's already gone, yeah.
Right.
yeah.
So you'd be looking at,
Mhm.
per hour, you'd be increasing that by a third,
So that would
roughly
increase it a little bit.
$40 an
Mhm,
hour.
mhm,
I think that's pretty darn good.
yeah.
So, what about throwing, something in there that, it looks to me like this thing's gonna kind of slow this fiscal year, we're probably gonna get hit a little heavier next year. So could we say that this 75 is level for that position for this year, and then revisit it at budget year next year to see if we're gonna get hit heavier in the fiscal year next year? If we get delayed that far, maybe we could bump this up a little bit possibly.
Yeah, I mean, once we hire somebody at a wage though, we're not gonna be able to reduce it next year.
No.
So
It would only be.
you're suggesting the other way around though. You're suggesting like the costs are probably more on the front end, the litigation costs, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think the other question, I think the third thing I'd ask for, is the part-time legal secretary, savings from Brooks' position, we use that for part-time legal secretary. Are you gonna approve that component as well?
That's what we talked about with yesterday.
That's the third part of that request,
Monday.
because obviously depending on experience, et cetera, of who we bring in, there might be some savings there that can apply to the other item.
And is that a position that Kelsey can fill coming out of Kirk's office?
She can, I visited with him, and there's no problem for 1 day a week, which would be the 1/5. He is not in support of reducing her position in his office to a 3-day-a-week position, because he's worried it'll never come back. And I think that's a valid point, so 1/5 of that time, yeah, or I guess it'd be half of the 2/5 would be fine. We would just do an internal advertisement. But I don't know if there's other part-time employees in the county who might also be interested in that. I don't know if there are.
We don't really have any other part-time employees other than Janaea, who would probably be interested maybe in something like that. And then, I don't know if that's something you would wanna split between 2 people, would that be?
The hard part with that is,
Confusing? I
we've been
mean-
trying to avoid the health insurance cost.
Right.
Yeah,
Cause Janaea is below that threshold, so it would bump her above the 32 hours and she would be eligible for health insurance then.
and that's another per year.
Kelsey's already eligible, so increasing her hours is not
Right.
an issue.
Story.
Now, this is money you're gonna have come in from Brooks' grant, is that right? Or,
So her grant is now 100%, so that, it's money that was in the budget for 2/5 of her time, that now is,
so you got some of that to put
right,
for the secretary, or
right.
paralegal, whatever you call it.
Again, if we look at 3 months of this fiscal year being gone, this is just a little bit, but this is, I think, fairly solid. So instead of a cut next year, what if we split 150,000, which is 2 years of 75,000? Half of it, or the portion, and proportion it out between the 2 years. I'll leave that to you, but it would be 3/4 this year,
Mhm.
and then 4 quarters next year.
Mhm.
So the 150 evenly split, which would probably be, I don't know, 80 and 100? 80,000 this year and then 100 next year? Or whatever the math is, I'm way off. Does that make sense? I'm reluctant to go over the 75, but I think that's quite a step.
You haven't had a chance to do any inquiring or anything, have you, told Corey? Or-
No.
You just about need this first, I guess.
And this would be misdemeanors and civil, is what we agreed to. And I would like to amend my motion to include that. This would be for civil services and misdemeanor, criminal as time allows. And that was per Cory.
And the only exception would be is if I was gone on a weekend or whatever, and there was someone needed an emergency call to a lawyer, to a prosecutor, but it would be.
And like I said, criminal as needed.
Right.
That would fit that, I do believe, per our discussion.
Okay.
Okay, is that a form of motion now, or?
Yeah, I did make it as a motion already. I'd be happy to repeat it if you'd like me to, Franklin.
Please, or have you got it, you wanna just read it off then, Michelle, if you have it,
Well, she
Well, I mean, we'll
motioned to
talk so much-
approve $75,000 for deputy county attorney for civil services, misdemeanors, and criminal case as needed.
For the duration.
for the duration of the
Bears
trial.
Any more discussion? Or that's, that hasn't been seconded yet, has it?
Yeah, I second it.
Nobody, okay. Moved and seconded. On the motion as stated, any more discussion? No more discussion, go to a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
As far as the secretary, I would go back to, again, the duration of the trial only. Um, I don't know, we're getting up there again. It's, we now haven't budgeted beyond this. Your numbers are reflecting 175. We already threw in the amount for 8 hours a week for a secretary. I would authorize Corey to find within his budget, either through the grant savings or other savings, the ability to, that shouldn't be hard. We've already authorized, I'm not gonna make a motion yet, we've already authorized 8 hours a week. You should be able to find the balance 8 hours a week for a total of 16 with the savings that Brooke was able to get in her grant. So I think this commission could authorize you for the secretary for 2 days a week, but I think we would leave it to you to find the funding for that, and we've already provided half of it. Is that agreeable, 2 days a week?
I need to understand exactly. So you're saying that prior to today, you already authorized the 8 hours a week for part-time secretary
And that's
in
your budget.
anticipation of the grant being, Brooks grant being approved?
No, we did it anyway,
Oh.
but we knew it was gonna be approved,
But,
we did it anyway.
So that was part of the original budget request.
No,
What
we actually did that through our budget work, so it wasn't the preliminary, but it was after that, if that's your question.
my question is, that was the expectation though, that equivalent of 2 days a week was gonna be saved, and that was already accounted for one day?
Yeah.
Of those two?
Yep, we funded 1 day.
The county funds funded it, not her 2/5 time.
Correct.
So there is 2/5 time money sitting out there.
There is. Now, everybody's gonna be asked to cut 5%, and that includes your department, because again, we're all in the same boat here. Then you're gonna get an infusion of this $175,000. So that may also be where you wanna take your 5% out, which is not a lot, but it is gonna hurt some departments. That's why everybody needs to be in the same boat. So that probably would be a good place for that to come from too. But I wouldn't think there's any reason you can't get 2 days, maybe even 2.5, perhaps 3, depending on how you choose to budget. So that would be up to you. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm gonna have to probably work with Debbie to look at all these numbers.
Yeah, they're going through my head too.
So I will move to authorize the county attorney to hire a part-time secretary not to exceed 28 hours a week for the duration of the Barris trial.
I'll second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Can you restate it for me? What you have written down there in the motion, please?
Motion to approve to authorize the county attorney to hire a part-time secretary not to exceed 28 hours a week for the duration of the Barris trial.
Okay, it's moved, motion been moved and seconded. Any more discussion?
Well, I guess
Yes.
this issue of not to exceed the duration of the trial, just so we understand that trial happens, there's sentencing, we're gonna have a sentencing hearing that's likely gonna be several days, kinda like a trial. I mean, it's it's not like the verdict's in and we tell people pack your bags and hit the road. So I mean, what we had talked about before was that depending on where that is, that we do have like a period to transition. So these employees aren't immediately just boom, gone. I mean,
And I think we talked about the sentencing as the, kind of the handoff point. After sentencing, that person becomes a ward of the state, correct? So the trial, in my opinion, ends with sentencing. So that's the verbiage, and maybe we can just put it in the minutes that way, that trial is defined as to sentencing. And hopefully it won't take 8 months like John Wright.
Okay.
And the reason I capped it at 28 is the health insurance.
Right.
I think that's too high, but the minute they hit 30, even on 1 week in a month, then we're obligated to pay the health insurance. So they cannot exceed 28 hours in any week, period, to alleviate that burden on the rest of the budget. Is that good with you?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'd like that in the minutes too, that agreement, just so that it's documented.
Okay, that motion been made and seconded. Michelle has read the motion off again. We'll go for a vote now. All in favor? Aye. Motion passed.
And I'm gonna give you these titles too, Corey, if you would. This is important stuff, but basically, 764005, a local government officer or official who violates subsection 1, which is local government officials may not make a disbursement or an expenditure or incur an obligation in excess of the total appropriations for a fund. Then back to subsection 2, if they do that, is liable for the amount of the excess disbursement, expenditure, or obligation personally. So I would just, we had a good discussion on Monday, but I need to reiterate publicly that you need to communicate with us prior to making an obligation on behalf of the county, because the budget falls on us and is our responsibility. So we have to have that teamwork and communication, period.
I agree with that, and I know that you're the ultimate budget authority, but the thing that I reiterated is that I'm the authority on the criminal cases, and we have our different roles. And so there's certain parts of this that I didn't feel was appropriate to ask permission on a decision, but I absolutely understand the implications that brings for resources. And I appreciate very much your help on this in every way. And I'll do my best to be very wise and shepherd these resources carefully.
I assume you'll start advertising or making arrangements to.
Yeah, I'll need to do that, and I'd like to meet with Debbie and know the exact layout of these numbers before I do that, so I don't
Yeah.
get crossways on that, and then but I think what we'll also do, we've talked in detail with the lawyers from the AG's office on some of these things, and I think we'll be able to, some of it will be public, and then there's maybe some closed door meetings where we're just gonna give you some updates as we go from time to time, so.
That would be good. The more we know, the more we can help you. And it just is gonna make life easier on everybody.
And I have a draft letter, I didn't get it done far enough to bring to you, but I'll bring draft letters to you for communicating with these other counties and asking them for assistance if they can do that, so.
Sounds good.
And then I'm planning to go to the city and ask them for a $10,000 increase, so is that, you guys on board with that?
Right.
Okay,
Where again, goes back to we're in this together.
Okay.
Yeah.
sounds good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
gonna submit this for the record. Debbie, any questions? I know you've gotta just be boiling over at this point.
Yeah, trying to make notes. For some reason I thought I added a special object code or something for him. Not a fund, but it was an object, instead of the contingency to put that 4,200 in, so I gotta go back and look, it doesn't have it on here.
4,200.
He wanted to budget 4,200 in his contingency line item, but we
Oh,
claimed
that's right.
that really can't be in contingency, the bars have changed. I come up with one, but it's not on here, so it must have been in 16, 17. I gotta go find it in the budget prep. See, this is where we're looking at individuals, things I remember, oh, it's not here, where is it? And then like, now this litigation fund, I did have one thing. Is he wanting that separate, or is that just gonna be part of his professional fees as he goes? Does that kinda,
You good with that?
yeah, I just wanted to make sure
Um,
that
you,
I
can
note
you
that,
track it?
that I note that, so that we can track it.
Yeah.
'Cause
Could we create a
Mm.
project number for that?
or
we
just
could track it?
another, and it might be just a simple, separate object
Something
that I can create and call in it as
specific,
far as
so we can
litigation or
obviously see this is the
fees.
cost associated with.
You know, that would be
This is
easier on
public safety,
everybody
other new
because we
fund
cannot
2304.
exceed it.
That was last year to help, with inmates, there's some of their money for their commissary and things is separate from, and not part of their budget. So they wanted that, so new TVs that they might need, or something that they,
New what?
TVs for the inmates.
No. We're cutting that. Everybody's
Yeah.
gotta give 5%, so they gotta give some stuff up.
So we had to do some of that.
Includes the
The
inmates.
cadaver cooler, these high, what did we call them? Coroner inquests that cost above and beyond regular coroner autopsy type stuff. Because one case will kill his budget. So that was set aside and money was put in there for him to have for that. We didn't put anything into it this year and he didn't spend any last year. So he's got whatever was given last year just kind of sitting there. He didn't, I don't know if he forgot about it.
That's not mentioned.
Yeah,
You still
so
got it.
that just needs to come off the pill. It was left on there in case, well, things change now, big time. So I'm starting from scratch almost, in some ways, so.
Yeah, I do think a separate object code, Corey will request that, and I think he's wise to do so.
Mhm.
He'll wanna watch where that's at. We'll need to watch where that's at, and we can't go over it, period. Even though the fund may not be overspent, we cannot exceed that 100,000 in
His
litigation.
count, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, because you just approved that for that purpose.
right,
Yeah.
right. If he needs more, he'll have to come forward and ask for it.
And maybe that contingency might be part of where he comes up with his secretaries.
Right.
Things have changed now, so that might just be. And that's the other thing with the revenue, I'll have to make sure I make note to increase that, his revenue for that, interlocal agreement on that,
Oh, yeah,
if they're gonna do that,
yeah.
for tracking.
I had asked Debbie after our training on the budget to create a new fund for county attorney outside of the general fund. With all this, I think the workload is already astronomical, so it may be something we have to do next year. But I think for this year, we keep it in the general
I think it would
fund.
be a lot more realistic to do it next year where he doesn't have this huge influxes and all this stuff going on in the middle of all of everything he's trying to be a lot more realistic with our budget then. Because if we try to approve a budget for next year with what he's going through with this, we're gonna end up, he's gonna have an extra $100,000 sitting there basically. If we try to go off anything we're doing this year and most likely even next year.
Yeah, yeah. So it's probably something down the road for sure, but not
If we
right
can
now.
just find them criminally insane, then a lot of this will go away. Or planetarily stupid would be a better classification, but they don't, that doesn't exist, so.
I like planetarily stupid and then shooting them to the moon and being done with it.
Yeah, but I might
There we
be
go.
fitting into that category, so I'm not gonna go there.
Sometimes I feel that way, Ike, I agree, I feel that one too.
Oh, send the bill to Missoula County.
No
Should
kidding.
have bought more shells.
Yeah. They need just an extra shot or two fired.
Yeah.
Maybe
He's so
we're out of
lucky.
shells.
Yeah,
That would have been the blessing,
yeah. Yeah,
but
Jefferson County locked on that one here a week or so ago.
Yeah,
Okay, anything else?
no, and if we could have our emergency department head meeting as early as possible on Monday, we can make sure that people have plenty of time to ask their questions.
yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay.
Okay.
and if they get it 3 times, how can they say they forgot?
Right, right.
And maybe print it off and put it in their boxes too.
And
For
I
those that are
would say
here.
this, if they don't come and don't send somebody in their stead, if they're gone, then we go ahead and just cut 5% down everything, because we can't wait for people to straggle in at the end.
Mm-mm.
We'll also have to have a deadline, because you need to get the budget,
Yeah.
legals done. So what's a reasonable time, do you think? Do you think that by Friday of next week is reasonable for people to have made their cuts?
Yeah, I guess them all week. It's not that hard. I could sit down and look at it and have it done in 5 minutes. So a whole week, I'm sorry, should be plenty of time. There's email, there's phone,
Right,
if they aren't in person.
and we don't have anything scheduled next Wednesday, but I would suggest that we schedule something so that if anybody needs to talk to us, if anybody simply cannot come up with that, cut, that we are available to talk with them.
Do we,
and work
don't we
with
have
them.
union, who's the union schedule?
That's Monday.
Monday afternoon.
Monday afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we could post for budget on next Wednesday and just be here to talk to people that need to negotiate, that would probably be good. And I'd like there to be no layoffs because of this.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we'll adjourn at 12:22, I guess.
Thanks, ladies, you guys do good work.
Don't know how.
If you need anything from us, if you need us on the spur of the moment, just give a call and we understand we're at the 11th hour and just piled you with a ton of work.
Yeah. I just need to get myself
Yeah.
plan of attack lined out and then work. People forget when they think about wages, there's what you get to take home that we base on, plus the employer side of things.
Right?
That you pay, the county pays, but people don't realize, where does that money come from? It come from them. So when I hear, expense, I see 75,000 total cost, just like a grant. Total cost, what is the county gonna pay's match?
Yeah.
Not just what the employee's gonna get, because then you go over, and then you're like, what
But I
happened?
see where he was
Yeah.
thinking. I mean, I see where his thought
His
pattern
thought
was.
process,
Yes,
you're
I mean,
gonna
I
pay
see where he,
$75,000,
I see where he was coming from. you know.
We don't get the other 20%
Because he's not thinking about it
off.
in that way,
Mm-mm.
because that's not where
I
he's.
think that's where Sherry was
looking
trying
at
to. She gets it.
it. So,
Yeah.
it's
in
just
your
the
language.
way, different, two ways of looking at something.
Yeah, so, that's why I wanted to be sure
Absolutely.
we're on the same page and it makes a difference in what I do.
Yeah.
I don't want to say, I didn't get what I wanted. There's two different ways to look at that. We're all fruit. We're not all apples or oranges, but we're all fruit. So we're a little different.